As we celebrate this upcoming Memorial Day weekend, I'd like to dedicate this video to those currently serving and those who paid the ultimate sacrifice for our country. Right now, we're in the midst of tough times here in the United States for a variety of reasons. But during these cloudy times, let us not forget the heroes that fought for our freedoms and our liberties that we cherish today. Without those brave souls, there would be no Coca-Cola 600 this weekend, and you guys wouldn't be watching this video from the comfort of your own home. I ask that you, at this time, pay respect to our nation's veterans because they deserve all the recognition in the world. And now, it's time to tier rank some patriotic paint schemes. Once again, we're in the Generation 4 of NASCAR, and I'm telling you, there are some firecracker-worthy paint schemes that'll make you sing God Bless America right in the middle of your residential street. So without further ado, it's time to tier rank these awesome red, white, and blue pieces of art here right now. Leading off is one of the more under-the-radar drivers and one of his under-the-radar paint schemes. Ricky Rudd raced this special motorcraft scheme during the 2003 season, one that commemorated the life's work of Henry Ford. Through his innovation with cars and the Model T, Ford's company has made it to 100 years and was and still is one of the most financially successful car companies on the market. Now, when you first look at this paint scheme with a blind eye, it's hard to get vibes to Ford or even a patriotic paint scheme. Instead of the Ford blue, you've got silver with some bright pink and yellow fireworks absolutely lighting up the side. The Wood brothers are known for simplicity, and so it is no surprise this is the only element to this car. And honestly, I think that's a very, very good thing, because had they overdone it, it could have ended up being a complete disaster on the racetrack. In terms of the 21, silver and a vibrant fireworks show on the side is all this one really needs. This car is a firecracker, so that's why I'm going to put it inside the firecracker tier. From one firecracker to another, this Ken Schrader scheme lit up the night during the 2000 Pepsi 400. And it wasn't just the paint scheme, as I'm looking at this car right now, and you can tell that they put a lot of effort, especially with the M&Ms on this car, making them stylized as American figures. You've got the red M&M styling the look of Uncle Sam, M&M scattered all over the front, and a beautiful gradient background to make this one stand out. The creativity of this first M&M's patriotic scheme is incredible. Wish they would have kept the sides consistent with each other, but I mean, after that, can you really critique this car? This is one that's very patriotic. In a race with a lot of fireworks, this one's going in the firecracker tier alongside Ricky Rudd. Now, its sequel for 2001, it was once again creative, bold, and catching to the eye, no matter if it was on TV or all the way in the nosebleeds for one of NASCAR's most iconic races of all time. And of course, they kept the unique M&M poses with the red M&M as Uncle Sam again, the green one adoring Lady Liberty, and the blue M&M holding the flag like an absolute stud. And I gotta say, the designers crushed that element for the second year in a row. However, honestly, in my opinion, I think they overdid this one. And yes, you can overdo a patriotic paint scheme. For me, there's just too much going on with this one, especially with the stars and stripes. I get they were trying to recapture the magic of the infamous 911 scheme, but what made that car so good was the fact that it was able to blend into one memorable uniting paint scheme. If you look at just the sides of this car, one at a time, you'd think these are two completely different paint schemes. I'm surprised M&M's got the approval from NASCAR to run this, because this car right here was probably a nightmare for NASCAR's timing and scoring to track from the press box. The 2002 edition of the M&M's Patriotic Paint Job was a lot more simplistic, and the team spotters probably exhaled a large breath of fresh air when this car was rolled out on the grid for the season's Pepsi 400. And I gotta say, just looking at this car, it is absolutely marvelous, fantastic. I mean, just take a look at the fireworks on this car. The vibrant red and blue really makes it stand out, and you get the white on the front, it just makes it pop. And as for the M&Ms, I've got to say for this one, I really like the colonial vibes this paint scheme gives off. Whether it's the red M&M holding up the original US flag created by Betsy Ross, or the blue M&M who you can just hear playing a wonderful patriotic tune inside your head. Amongst the M&M paint scheme so far, this was the one that did the best job mixing creativity and simplicity. This car is much more than a firecracker. It is pure patriotism. Not only was 2004 the year that pumped some potential into Elliott Sadler's Cup future, but it was the revival of the Eminem's brand in the NASCAR Cup Series. And its patriotic scheme is no exception. To match the modern Eminem scheme template, we've got bigger candy pieces with a red, white, and blue showcased by a clean white background. And then, of course, with this one, we've got stylized M&Ms once again, as we got the red one, he's holding the spatula. It looks like he's ready to grill. And the blue one, we've got a great American hat on, and he's got a firecracker ready to wave that thing around. Pure patriotism, he shouts. At least, that's what I envision him doing. It's a car with a lot of style, which was overshadowed by a mediocre 26th place finish in the actual race. Therefore, I think this scheme deserves some due credit, and I'm going to put this one in a very respectable ranking in the firecracker tier. Now, for 2005, they take that same paint scheme, but this time they inverse the blue and white. And I'm just looking at the renders of this car. It looks absolutely fantastic. You got the green M&M looking like she's ready to go on a picnic. You've got the vibrant white and red M&Ms. It just screams patriotism. There's no way they can screw this up. What the hell did you guys do to this paint scheme? My goodness, if you guys really wanted the illuminated bright orange number to help spotters see this car from a distance, it would have looked 100 times better with a blue roof color. Plus, I mean, come on, this car was already a standout from a distance with the red and white candy pieces. You really needed that number? I mean, I'm sure plenty of spotters could distinguish this car from a far distance. I've just got to say this, the yellow roof number just makes this car look stupid and bad. It ruined it completely. And therefore, I've got to rank this one very, very low. The final generation 4 Eminem scheme was driven by rookie David Gilliland. And honestly, I'm looking at this car right now, I've just got to say this car is very, very meh. The thing that really kills this car for me has to be the chocolatey background, as I know they were trying to go this route for the 2007 season, but seriously, they could have gotten rid of it for just one race and gotten with a more patriotic color for the background. Plus, I gotta say, the Eminem poses are not good, as apparently they're shopping at Kroger. I mean, shopping's still an American thing, but come on. I mean, really, there's some better ideas they could have came up with in this car. Therefore, this one gets a pretty low ranking. As much as the patriotic paint schemes were a pretty mixed bag for M&Ms, I gotta say, their creativity was absolutely astounding in the early 2000s. This would be a far cry from the M&M's paint schemes we got in the late 2010s and even still today. This paint scheme right here is, to my account, the only Home Depot patriotic scheme that ever raced. Tony Stewart highlighted the Declaration of Independence road trip on his Chevrolet for the 2003 Pepsi 400. This nonprofit partisan project sent the original copy of the Declaration of Independence on a world tour to inspire people, mostly youth, to see citizenship as a sense of pride and engage in civic duties. Honestly, we could use a little bit of that today. Now, unlike companies such as Interstate Batteries and M&M's, Home Depot wasn't willing to give up its iconic orange. It's some pretty tedious waters to get into, especially if the company colors don't fit the paint scheme. The final result was a bit of orange on the A pillar and B pillar, which fits in nicely along with the wavy American flag stretching across the side. Home Depot pulled off a rare company patriotic color matchup, and these patriotic ranking videos would be much more peaceful if we had more paint schemes like this. Fortunately, from a viewer standpoint, there are some companies that ended up screwing it up big time. We all know just how good Greg Biffle's National Guard paint scheme was, but what about the first Guard paint scheme in the Cup Series? In 2003, it was the Guard's first full season, and they were sponsoring the Travis Carter-owned number 54, raced by Todd Bodine. I'm sure this car looks very familiar to you, but you guys just can't pinpoint it. Well, this car is mainly recognized because it was a part of a highlight reel crash at Michigan where Bodine went up into the air and nearly flipped over. Thank goodness he stayed on two wheels at all times and walked away unscathed. Now, when you first look at it, the only difference is the number, you could say, is it's blue instead of yellow. However, when I look further into this paint scheme, you got the front, it's blue, and then the stretching waves across the side looks fantastic. And then even the hood logo looks absolutely fantastic with the Guard. It's outlined in red, and then the lettering is in white. Pops on this paint scheme, absolutely pops. This car succeeded in a lot of ways. I gotta put this one in a high ranking. Absolutely beautiful. Great job, National Guard. Now, the success and boldness of the National Guard layout created a trend, one that would be repeated to the point where it loses its sense of pride. The first was this Ford Taurus raced by Kirk Shelmerdine during the 04 season. Now, there were a couple variations of this paint scheme, as the first one looks like the Todd Bodine number 54 with neon yellow numbers. Then you have this edition promoting the re-election of then-President George Bush and Dick Cheney, and I gotta say, this car looks straight up like it was purchased by Roush Fenway Racing. I know this was a smaller team, but this straight up looks like a backup or reject Roush chassis before it does an actual Kirk Shelmerdine paint scheme. There isn't much more to make you believe the creativity was strong in this one, so therefore this one gets a very low ranking. The second Shelmerdine design a year later was very similar, except it featured a new number and looked a bit less like a Roush knockoff, especially without the brilliant neon yellow and the red border on the hood and sides. A bit of an improvement, but the Shelmerdine team could have done a lot more to stand out. And then finally we've got Ken Schrader for the fourth time in this video with his 2007 PVA.org paint scheme. Wash, rinse, repeat. I'm not saying any of these cars above are awful, but after the National Guard schemes, this paint scheme loses its novelty, and it shouldn't be raced outside of the occasional throwback. For the next batch of patriotic paint schemes, we've got to highlight the iconic American brand Budweiser. First up is the number 25 driven by, you guessed it, Ken Schrader. At this point, he's got to be up there as one of the most patriotic drivers of all time. To support the United States in its efforts in the 1996 Olympics in Atlanta, Ken Schrader would sport this Budweiser paint scheme. It should be no surprise, as Budweiser was also a proud partner of the US Olympic team at the time, albeit using this product for a track meet or swim relay, not the greatest idea. As for this paint scheme, the car looks decent with the blue trim, the white stars, and the red background. I would rank this one highly if it weren't for those squiggly white stripes. They just don't fit into the paint scheme, and as much as I like the idea, the execution was just poor. Gotta rank this one pretty low on the list. For the 2007 NASCAR Cup Series season, Anheuser-Busch and the sport's most popular driver finally got back in the patriotic game. It began at Charlotte for the Coca-Cola 600. Dale Earnhardt Jr. sported the world's fastest camouflage to honor our nation's bravest who paid the ultimate sacrifice. And when I'm looking at this paint scheme right now, I'm telling you, I like the camo element. This is a design we haven't really seen much in the NASCAR Cup Series, at least in this brownish sort of way. And honestly, when I'm just looking at it, they did a fantastic job, even with the Budweiser logo. You'd think on a car like this, the white wouldn't show up, but they did a great job, especially outlining in black. There are rarely any complaints about this car, and honestly, I'm going to put this one high. I'm going to put it in the Patriotism on Wheels tier. Absolutely fantastic, especially being one of the first true camo paint schemes here in NASCAR. The second paint scheme would be run during the Pepsi 400, as Dale Earnhardt Jr. ran this blue, red, and white Budweiser paint scheme, once again further distancing himself from the Budweiser brand. Now this one's going to send Dale Jr. Nation and NASCAR Twitter into a frenzy, but this paint scheme, honestly, it's a bit overrated. Now I'm not saying this is a bad paint scheme, as there's a difference between a bad paint scheme and an overrated one. And plus, if I really hated this paint scheme, then why would I have the 124 right here and then also the 164 of this diecast? This is a great paint scheme. You got the blue across the top, you got the stars on the front, you have the red and white stripes swooping across the side, and then you've got the back with the blue stars, and then you have the Budweiser logo. It fits in great to this paint scheme. This one's a beauty. Overhyped, but it is a fantastic patriotic paint scheme. Remember those Jimmie Johnson Power of Pride paint schemes from the last installment? Well, we didn't even get to the 2007 version, an absolutely fantastic paint scheme. So much so that they have the 124 of this version, as I've had this car since my childhood. And then recently, around Halloween, I picked up the 164 at a vintage store, and I'm telling you, it's great to have this car on both scales. Because I gotta tell you, this car is fantastic from the dark blue Lowe's house, and then on the side you got the metallic red swoop. I mean, it's absolutely fantastic and stands out. And then you have the kind of metallic white background, which I think fits greatly with this paint scheme. And then to top it all off, look at that, you got the American flag stretching across the side, and then on the back you got the two American flag lines going down the side. This car is flawless. I gotta tell you, it's one of the greatest patriotic paint schemes that's ever raced. This one is definitely going in the Patriotism on Wheels tier. There will be no debate otherwise. Next up, we've got a very underrated patriotic paint scheme, as this one in the 2007 Coca-Cola 600 was fielded by the Haas CNC racing team and sponsored by Best Buy. Jeff Green Chevrolet took an approach of a vibrant line design, and from a distance, it almost looks like flames. And I gotta tell you, there's nothing wrong with flames. And the way it's incorporated in the white background, this car definitely stood out from a crowd, and I like the uniqueness of this one. I'm going to rank this one very high in the firecracker tier for sure. Rounding out part 2 of the Generation 4 tier rank is Kenny Wallace, everyone's favorite driver on NASCAR Twitter, and his patriotic design from 2006 to 2007. For 2 straight seasons, his car was painted up to commemorate the National Day of Prayer. And then in 2007, they ran this paint scheme with just the Furniture Row logos in the 2007 Pepsi 400. And my goodness, if there was a car to end this tier ranking video, this is a great one to close out with, because just looking at this paint scheme, it was kind of going a bit for an inverted National Guard look, as you've got like the blue and you have the red and white stripes going along the side. But then on the front, what they did with this car is fantastic, as you got kind of this silver look. And that's something that makes this car pop. It makes it stand out. It makes it look lively. And then when it kind of goes into the red and white stripes on the side, that's another great element of this car. Barney Visser and the 78 team did a good job with this one, and it deserves some more success and even some more races. Martin Truex Jr., Auto Owners, this would have been a great paint scheme to run during Throwback Weekend, just saying. So anyways, this is NRF signing out, and just remember, life's a beach and then you drive, and also God bless America.